Yeah, the whole notion of Arts Front being, helping shape the future, but through coming together. So I said this last night in the First Nations. It's not about turning, the roadshow turns up and say, we're going to help, define what the solutions are to all your problems. It's the mechanism of how we come together. And
there's a collective, I think, purpose around our well-being and our being. So I think that's certainly an Aboriginal perspective. I mean, from an Aboriginal perspective, connectedness through story, dance, art forms is about being.
I really want to support Tasmanian artists and local things and First Peoples, and I want all of that to come from here, but I also want to see a lot more come in, and I want to support Black, LGBTQ, African, I want all that to come, but I also want it to be all Tasmanian, so.
Tassie has changed a lot, but not that much, it's still, in many ways it hasn't changed, and I just wonder what it is to be Tasmanian, really.
It draws in the whole notion of cultural cringe as well, because I was one of the people who left and came back, and always held that Tasmanian thing pretty strongly. But there's such cultural cringe, and it doesn't. We're holding our heads up higher and our shoulders back a lot more than we have for a long time. But there's still kids who are wanting to go. Like, it's exactly the same conversation that 18-year-olds are having as they were 20 years ago, or 10 years ago, or 30 years ago. And it's not a bad thing for people to go and learn and come back, or not.
Most people, if you ask them if they've had a transformative experience through art, most people can think of something. Like a friend was saying that when he was growing up in Wales, and they had a lodger, and he left some records behind, and he took one of the records and he took it up to his room and he played it. Was The Clash, and he just had never heard anything like it. And that is a transformative experience through art. But that kind of thing is not what a lot of people see as art.
But I've seen that in Tasmania. I've seen it after the Happiness Project had that retrospective in the Salamanca Art Centre.
Yeah, how do we build on that then?
The view, the energy that came out of a number of different, there was this, the stories sort of sitting next to each other, and then there were kind of all of the family members of people who were in the stories, and they were from diversity. So it's kind of happening, I guess.
So that's where the inspiration to do the public value campaign came from. It's exactly that thing. That
language is something that needs to change.
That came out
language is something that needs to change in the art.
That came out last night in community discussion as well.
Every time someone says it in a circle like this, I have to reinterpret it in my head, because it's not. Communities are totally. It's a different thing for us. Culture is definitely a different thing for us. So language has to be looked at in the arts and in Australia in general. Language has to be looked at. Because we can't express ourselves in a way that we need to as artists, as activists, as First Nations. It's not accessible to our communities. It's not accessible to our youth. It's,
If we actually take control of that language a little bit and say, no, we do need to build those connector things into the way we phrase and devise our programs, and maybe then the funding bodies or whoever, government, may see that as being a valuable thing.
To change dialogue into the value of jobs and the value of health and the value of education is actually really fundamental to doing all the other things, getting it in school, getting it into the political world, getting the resources, So I'm going to make a bump stick.
I will buy one.
All right, around two.
Australia.gov.au, about Australia, Australian stories, Australian identity. When you look at Australian identity,
So much fun.
Australian National Anthem, Anzac Day, the beach, the bush. Does this define who you are as Australian? Which opens up the question of, it's a big task. Are we happy with this? Is this what defines us? Because this is what the Australian government is putting in the public domain. It's our obligation as artists and cultural practitioners to lead the way on this, because no one else is.
This arts vision is a challenge to the values of this nation. It is okay. this is the Australia we'd love to have, where people respect each other, where love and generosity is core to everything we do, and listening and all that stuff. So for me, it's enormously complex and difficult, and but it actually boils down to that stuff. Is going, what kind of life do we want to have as humans, as cohabiters of this planet?
We don't have a clear understanding of what it means to be Australian. We're still a colonial mentality. We need to get to the same point where Singapore or Malaysia or India or Pakistan or Sri Lanka goes, we are Sri Lankan. We're not, we're not an English colony. We haven't got there. So all the stories that we have, every community has, are all there, and there's a lot of people who are passionate about them, but there is nothing that actually brings it all together.
Arts and culture have always led the way in the shift towards cultural change, and giving a voice that's very direct around, we didn't ask for recognition, I can tell you that.
No.
And so let's hear the voices, the Australian population voices, actually being able to listen to what we're asking, what we've been saying all along.
Australia's not going to work out what it is until there's a treaty, until the first night. This whole question of what the hell happened? Let's be honest. Let's go. And I think that's doable. That has to be doable really soon. It's moving, and all this other stuff. We have to go. Let's believe it. And if we don't believe it, and we don't go, look, I want this to happen sooner than 2030. Let's work. It's not going to happen through us sitting around talking. It's actually where the rubber hits the road. We actually have to make it happen. And social change has always happened through the sacrifice and struggle of a whole lot of really good people.
How do we bring back our own self-authority? Treaty is very much around how do we reclaim the self-authority of a shared collective experience about spirit is leading this gig. And how do we turn that back over to that?
One of the most important ways forward for the change, to be like it's kind of be the change you want to see, but it's also, I think that's how change happens, and I think artists have a role in leading that.
And if we're looking at redetermining our own identity, and treaty can be a catalyst through the arts practitioners, we actually get to enliven this truth that we all have the inner knower. We all are connected. We all know this. We know this stuff. We live it. It is who we are. And yet, how do we ensure that this is where we're leading first and foremost from?
If we can be led through a process where you can really tune into what that inner knowing is, and then feel some sort of responsibility to actually act from that place rather than from the conventional wisdom of what is accepted and part of the dominant paradigm and the expected way of behaving and being, and strategically what you think is going to work, as opposed to what you know in your innermost being to be right.
But how do we, as a collective, actually go, and this is who we are, this is our belonging. We belong. We are the human race and we belong here. And for me, that's the excitement. And I would be, I would probably check out of the process if it was a political driven, the parameters. Let's get the politicians to change their mind to make I think we would just be missing a huge opportunity.
I think any cultural shift has to come from the youth, from the small people, and I think people like myself that are youth workers have a massive responsibility to harbour a culture where we do talk about these things and it is common knowledge within our space, and that goes for diversity as well.
What makes us First Nations, and one of the women from Canada, I'm pretty sure, she said, well, we've got the 4 R's system, and was it responsibility, respect, reciprocity, and relationships, I think it was, and we all just went, yep. It was just that easy. It was just that easy for people from all over the world. Done. That's us.
Can you
And
repeat it again?
every Māori, Turtle Island, Australian from all over Australia all just went, yeah.
Yeah.
You know, which was, it was a bit of a moment because we've never had that discussion that what makes us the same in regards to being First Nations people.
That's why I think a platform of wellness can be a really powerful one to bring everyone in partnership to make people listen. We need healing, and the way to heal is through connection with arts.
And it's that, it's us being in this room, it's us being in the meetings that we're going to and having a voice and feeling safe in having that voice that is making the change. And the feeling safe is imperative. We're re-educating the nation by showing the real history of Australia and where the future could be. So the arts industry is already making leaps and bounds. It's just getting society then to see those shows and those films and not see them as a niche, but see them as mainstream, see them as things they need to see for Australia to move on.
I think.
And what I'm hearing is I would like to see, whereas I challenge everyone to say the future will be. Because I would like to see, in one sense, devolves responsibility. Because it's like, and that's really what Arts Front's about. It's like, who's going to take charge?